The Wavelengths present a conversation with everyday people doing extraordinary things, making the world a better place. Meet Bridget Peeples, psychic medium, clinical hypnotherapist, and life coach. Learn how Bridget came to understand her gifts from Source, discovered and explains the difference between being psychic and being a medium, deals with being surrounded by those on the other side of the veil, copes with having precognition, and helps people process their grief. We hope you enjoy our conversation with Bridget.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Drake. And
hi, I'm Dante Bouchard.
And I'm Sandy Howard.
And we are the Wavelengths. And today we're going to interview a delightful friend of mine whose name is Bridget Peeples. Bridget's on the West Coast. Not that it matters, of course, because we do everything by Zoom or similar. But she is a psychic medium, a clinical hypnotherapist, and a life coach. So we're going to have a meaningful conversation with Bridget and learn more about her. Hey, Bridget, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you all for having me. I'm looking forward to speaking with you ladies and finding out about what we all do to make this place a unique planet to live on.
Well, it is so wonderful to have you on our podcast, and I am really looking forward to knowing more about you. Your life and work sounds so fascinating, and I would love to know a little bit more if you could describe what it is that you do.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So ever since I was a young child, I always kind of knew things about people, different events that were going to transpire. And it just kind of started and evolved from there. In my early 30s, I started realizing I had a ability to connect with spirit. Wasn't quite sure what it was. So I had to learn on my trial and error on my own. So today I actually bring messages of healing through to people who've lost loved ones and are just really grieving, to help them start through that grieving process, or hopefully release the grieving process, or at least make it a little palatable in ways of honoring their loved one that is no longer with us in the physical, but definitely with us in the spiritual world, and teaching them how they can connect with their loved one.
Well, thank you. How did you get more details? You kind of touched on everything, but I know this is not what you're doing for your day job.
No. I would love this as my full-time job for sure, because it's just such peace. You can't describe it, but you can try. So about 20 years ago, I just kept having these images of an event that was going to take place. And I remember thinking I was going crazy. And my husband, of course, would make fun of me and say, boola boola and all that good stuff, and kind of tease me. And I finally said, I need a sign. And my husband's like, yeah, give her a sign. Go ahead, and kind of, oh, holy one, kind of joking. And he was the blunt of the proof, I guess. I kept picking up an accident involving a semi and a white pickup, and not realizing at the time, because spirit has a funny way, if it directly impacts myself or my family, that they don't let me realize it's them that it's going to happen to. So about the 11th day in of feeling this, I could feel the impact of this collision everywhere I went. I thought I was going crazy because I could feel that impact. And my husband the night before says, you need a nap. He kisses me on the forehead and just kind of pats me on the head. And I'm like, don't patronize me, And then the next morning, the white pickup T-boned his semi-truck. And they were both traveling over 55 miles an hour.
Wow.
Both vehicles, pretty much the white pickup disintegrated on impact. It hit the tractor, the back two sets of wheels of the tractor, broke the drive shaft and everything. So the trailer itself was 80,000 pounds on a flatbed. It didn't shift, it didn't move, but it was traveling still, 55. the truck was disabled, so it was screeching, and there was ditches on both sides. And he said it felt like someone had lifted him up and just set him on the side of the road. And of course, about an hour before the accident occurred, I called my pastor because I was just really, coming unglued and feeling this and just didn't know what to do with it. And, he says, well, let's say a prayer for Brian, that's my husband, and the gentleman in the white truck. And I'm like, okay. And again, not realizing it. And the man in the pickup truck suffered seatbelt burns. Both of them were not injured. And
Wow.
Department of Transportation, came out and said, well, where are the bodies? And he says, no one's injured, no one's killed. And they're like, how is that possible? So definitely divine intervention. I asked for a sign, we both did. And that's kind of what started me on this path, realizing that I'm not crazy, that I definitely do connect with some others on the other side, whether it's guides, angels, or loved ones, spirit, that they're always willing to help us out and kind of guide us and protect us and kind of help us. I really feel that at that point in my life, I kept feeling like I needed to go to God, and I wasn't raised religious. So for me, my husband and I were like, what? But I just kept feeling that I had to have that connection with spirit. And that's kind of what started my path. So it was a really big eye opener for me.
So that's what started you.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that it was kind of like teaching yourself, trial and error type thing. So what happened next now that you have your sign?
Yeah. So I started taking classes from different people, not realizing my full capabilities for quite some time. Back then, where I live in Salem, it was illegal to practice any type of psychic work or mediumship. So things have changed a lot over the years, but back then I was a little afraid. So a lot of people weren't willing to mentor me, or they would say, well, you're more gifted than I am, so I don't know how I can help you. So I basically had to learn faith and trust what my guides were giving me and know that it was valid and actual, and not to discount those feelings. I mean, I had them always as a child growing up, and I always avoided danger and trouble because my guides always protected me, but it didn't really dawn on me that that's what I was doing until I was in my early 30s. So it was an incredible experience. Since that time, I've done hundreds of readings for people, lots of validation in there. So that's, I think, where the trial and error. I've tried to work with other people as far as teaching classes and stuff. And that's the trial and error part, because we all are so uniquely gifted. And a lot of people would say in my early years, and both you ladies probably get this, all of you, that people say, well, this other psychic I talked to told me this, or they told me that. And it's something completely different. So I've learned over the years that what that really means is we all perceive information differently. When we get information, it has to go through Bridget's filter, just like it goes through Sarah's and Shantae's and Sandy's. We're going to relay the message differently just based on our life experiences and our toolbox, for example. Right. So that's kind of where that trial and error comes from. But I do caution people that you really do want some validation. If there's no validation on anything, I just tell them to think about it, take it with a grain of salt, and don't necessarily hold on to it, because that person that's reading may either interpret the information wrong, or they might be really new still and just give them their opinion. There is that fine line, when you're dealing with information for people, that you want to respect their boundaries and not try to push my ego into the situation. Right. So I try to never read for family or my children, unless they're in danger, of course. But when it comes to life stuff, I'd rather send them somewhere else, just because I don't want mom's influence to potentially come through.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's a balance, because they'll be like, well, or someone will say, well, you said this. Well, you have free will.
Right,
I've had people that my sister-in-law, some woman years ago told her she was going to be buying a new car. And I guess she had been looking for a new car. And they said, I see you buying a red car. So she intentionally bought blue. And then said, the lady was wrong. And I'm like looking at her like, that's called free will, But yeah, so I just thought that was really interesting. So some people just have to, wrap their brain around it. It kind of freaks them out a little bit. So learning to read the energy when I'm meeting with people, and I know you all know what I'm talking about, when someone sits in front of you and they're, and they don't even flinch. So we all kind of know what that's like. And it's just interesting. And my first reading ever in a group reading was probably a little over 15 years ago. And I kept seeing this arrow, like a street sign, pointing to the man, pointing to the person, like the next person over. And I was like, I keep getting this arrow pointing to the person next to you. And I should have known that meant move on to the next person. But I missed the sign. So there's some trial and error.
Live and learn.
I was nervous. It's my first reading, and he was one of these.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun. Yeah. So those different experiences, over the years. So I definitely enjoyed the journey for sure. And I'm always grateful when spirit will give me information. But again, I try not to ever read people without their consent. And I do think, as you all probably agree, there's a difference between the mediumship and the psychic ability.
Right.
To where when loved ones. Yes, Shantae?
Oh, I agree with you. And could you elaborate a little bit more on the difference between psychic and medium? Because a lot of people will say, oh, I'm a psychic medium, and they'll get the two confused, or they'll feel that they're synonymous when there's a pretty distinct.
Yeah. And it took me a while to figure that out, obviously, because like I said, trial and error. But yeah, when you're doing a psychic reading, you are picking up on the energy of the person that you're reading. So, the interactions that they're having with others. And when you're talking as mediumship reading, you're specifically connecting with a loved one on the other side, someone that has transitioned into spirit. Sometimes our angels will come through and help with the psychic part. But again, they haven't been embodied. So I still try to keep them categorized as psychic versus your grandma's coming through and this is her message for you. That would be the psychic reading, where a lot of people get those very confused, or they're not sure who they're tapping into. So I try to, for myself, I categorize it as if they've crossed over, they've been in the physical body, I'm calling that mediumship. If it's anything else, I call it psychic, if that helps.
That is very clear.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Some people don't think so, but I'm like, okay.
But I remember the story, you were, going back to being careful with who you share information with. I remember the story you told me about your boss and when you were picking up energy with her. Would you mind sharing that with our viewing public?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've known my boss for about 10 years, but we had a big separation of time, probably 9 of those years not working together. So started working together about a year ago, and she literally comes outside my office and she's sending me a telepathic message to see if I was going to pick it up. Cause I'm like, I don't read you. And she's like, you liar. And I'm like, no, I really don't. But if your grandma comes through your dad, that's a little different. That's the mediumship. And I honor spirit that way in bringing messages through because they come to me, and I never charge for that. If someone directly comes to me and I have to reach out to someone, I don't charge them because that's kind of my relationship. So my boss, though, is sending me a message telepathically and then opens up my office door and comes in and goes, so what am I thinking? And I just looked at her and I'm like, I don't know. And she laughs and goes, yes, you do. And so I told her, so-and-so put in their notice. And she goes, I knew it. You are able to read me. And I was like, quit sending me messages, So, and I try really hard not to do that or tap into her energy. But she's one of those people, I absolutely love her, but she sends out so much energy that I'll be walking by her and I'll just look at her and I'm like, I don't want to know. And she'll be like, oh, and I'm like, no, I don't. She doesn't always believe me though, but I just don't say anything, I'm just like, okay. But I always know when she's trying to hide something. And it's same with the kids, my kids, they never would really lie to me when they were little, especially because they knew I knew, And so I tried really careful to not read them, but they will say stuff like, let me give an example here. Oh, if they're trying to hide something, just like kids do, right? My kids are adults now. But when they're little, they always try to hide something, or someone's hiding something from me, including my boss. I instantly pick it up. And I told her, I said, I don't read you, but if you're hiding something, my guides make me very aware that there is something that you're trying to keep from me. And it usually is directed at me or something really important. So I always tell people, like when I pull cards live on Monday nights, I'll ask them to ask the question. I just say, I don't want to know what it is. I don't need any details. Just telepathically send me the question. I'll pull the card that correlates. And usually everyone will say, oh, it's spot on. So I don't have to know. And I've learned that when you take the ego out of it, it's none of my business. I don't want to know. There's too much going on, in people's thoughts, that I really try to respect that. But if it's a spirit, I'm sorry, you're getting the message.
And so when you're getting these strong messages from people who broadcast clearly, is there a way that you either withdraw or, I don't know, conceal your energy? Do you have some tips and techniques for people who are listening that might have that as well? Like something that they could do to, just pull back and create more of an energetic boundary with those types of situations.
Yes, I envision myself. No, it's a great question. I envision myself, and I teach this a lot or talk about this a lot when I do live videos, is envisioning like a shape of a hula hoop and a white light that you're going to step into that space. It's kind of like with the NLP, hypnosis and NLP, where you step into something to feel what it feels like, right? And you feel it in the body, and then you can step back out of it. So I will literally step into that tube. I call the tube of white light, connecting me, grounding me to the Mother Earth and to heaven, to where that kind of shields me from people. If I forget, and I'm driving and something feels weird, like on the road, I drive a lot, I'll put a protection of white light around me in my vehicle that makes me invisible to, being hit or anything like that. So I try really hard. At work, though, no, I work where a lot of people die. We'll just say that. And they're always bugging me. The spirits are. And so I get it a lot. So.
How do they come? How do you perceive them? Do you perceive them physically, or do you hear them as voices? Are they speaking to you, or are you just kind of picking up the thoughts? Is it more of a claircognizant mediumship experience? How would you describe it?
It's kind of a mix. It depends really on that person. So it's a really good question, because there's different ways I pick things up. I know what they look like. So for me, it's a knowing, kind of like a stop sign. You know what a stop sign looks like. And you can visually close your eyes and just see that stop sign. So I can know what people look like hair color, length, figure, height, allergies, birthmarks, those kinds of things. It's just a knowing, as if I've seen them. I know what they look like. And I don't have to see them physically, because I know what they look like. I know they're there. So mine's a little bit different. Sometimes I will see, like, when you see natural gas coming out of a meter, like you go by a meter and it looks like this clear, kind of a clear energy moving up in the outside, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It has a little bit of.
Ever notice that?
He coming off the straight, sort of wavy.
Yes, like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll see that, and I'll see the shape of a person, though, in that kind of that clear looking, like almost like they're invisible, and I can see their outline, their shape. So I pick them up that way. Sometimes I'll pick them up, I'll walk by them, and I'll feel the change of the density in the room. Even though there's no one in the hallway, it's almost like I bump into them and go, oh, sorry, Right. And I have a gal, so I work with seniors. I work with a lot of people with dementia. And a lot of people think they're having delusions. I disagree. I had a gal the other day having a full conversation, and she's, pointing over here and talking over here. And my gal at the front desk is standing there, and I'm, of course, in front of her with my arm like this, just watching, because I know what's going on. I can't see them, but I could sense them all there. And I knew who some of them were that were there. So I finally said to her, I said, I called her by her name. I says, why don't you introduce me to your friends here? And she looks at me like, you see them? And I just said to her, I go, mm-hmm. And she's like, kind of a little nervous because, again, this is someone with full cognitive impairment. And so she's just, telling me where to get coffee. And then she goes, I go, well, I go, oh, is it George? Because I knew George was one of the people that was there, and he had passed and he had lived there prior. And so she looks at me and because I kept hearing that j. And then she finally goes, it's Jer. And I'm like, okay. So both George and Jer are here. And she goes, yes. I was like, okay. So I went and told my administrator, I says, I says, that's my boss. I said, hey, guess so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And told her, and she goes, oh, and I go, I don't know who Jer is. And she goes, well, he passed away here too. I'm like, okay, then. So yeah. So I work in senior living. So it's just part of my job. People pass away all the time. We lose 1 to 2 people a month, sadly, and sometimes more with what's going on in the world at the moment. So it's definitely can be a little trying at times, but I can always kind of sense them. And even if I don't see them, I know where they are. Like if they're standing in a hallway, I can just feel them in the hall. I can tell how far they are from me. Sometimes I'll walk by and I'll kind of move out of the way because I can feel them coming through. It's just really unique. It's hard to describe though, but I don't see them like you and I are sitting here. And I don't want to. Let me be clear. I don't want to. I do hear voices outside of the body. Yes. When it's telepathic, is mostly how I get a lot of my information is telepathic. And every once in a while, I will hear somebody auditorily call my name. And my kids will hear it. Grandkids hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when you hear out-of-body voices, how would you describe them? Do they sound different than like a human voice in any way? Is it clear? Is the intonation varied? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So for example, when my son was in high school, it was about 6:30 in the morning. Then we're in the kitchen having breakfast. I'm getting ready to take him to school. And I hear someone go, Ryan. And I'm like, who was here? Where is that girl? Because it was as clear as you and I talked. And then he goes, it's the ghost. I go, BS. There is no way. You got a girl here. And I was really upset with them. And he's laughing. He goes, no, I swear it's not. And we hear, Ryan. We hear it again. And I'm like, where is she? And I go looking for this person in the house and there's nobody there. And I'm like, damn it. So, and another time, my mom didn't believe in any of this stuff. She would always say, we'll see, all my predictions over the years. And she finally got her, we'll see. So that's another story. But she was outside. My grandson was about 9 months old. No, was he? Yeah, about 8 or 9 months old. I had him in his little walker plaything, and her friend was on the roof doing some work on my roof, and they'd come up from California for a visit. And he's from Romania. So his voice is very strong. And we kept hearing a woman's voice calling my name. They kept saying, Bridget. And my mom's like, who is that? And I looked at her and I said, it's the ghost. And she goes, there's no ghost. There's no such thing as ghost. I said, trust me, it's the ghost. And she's like, no. So they say my name again. And my mom starts walking around, looking at the neighbor's house, going between the two houses. And she's starting to get freaked out at this point because there was nobody there. And sometimes I answer them because I'm not paying attention. I'll be like, yeah. And I'll be like, oh, who called me? So yeah, it's all different, but usually it's female voices. Very seldom, only a few times I've had an actual man's voice call out my name. And it's usually if I'm sleeping.
Interesting.
I'll call my name. Yeah. Yeah. But not very often. Mostly it's, telepathic for the most part. Yeah. Have you ladies had that experience?
I've heard my name called, especially when I went on a, what do you call them? It's the Native American quest. Like when you go on a walkabout, except what I did is I had a timeshare. So I swapped it for a timeshare in the mountains and created a crystal circle and fasted and did a lot of soul searching and was in the middle. I slept in the middle of a 13-foot circle made of crystal rocks. And one morning around, I guess it was around 5:30, I hear my name called and I'm like, what? And outside was this beautiful sunrise with a deer right there. And I just felt like that's why I was awakened, was to see that. There have been other times too, but I don't remember them.
Yeah. How about you, Shantae or Sandy?
I've usually am fixing to take a shower, and I hear these little fairy Sandy at various times. So they're always talking, but I'm quiet, so I'm ready to sort of listen and hear them there.
Yeah.
And waking up out of a dead sleep, thinking it's my mother calling me. She's like, no, I'm not, but or someone is, has been around and is like, oh, no one is here, or I think it's someone else. But the biggest time was I was in a car wreck and I could see it coming, and I literally heard this big voice, and it was like the Third Rock from the Sun, big head kind of thing. And I'm like, a Wizard of Oz. There's a big head in the back of my car. And I literally turned around because it was calling my name. And because I turned around and I'm going, that was like a huge experience. So I turned around and looked, going, oh my God, that's a voice, really strong and a male voice. And because I fell right in between the steering wheel and the door, I had a bruise on my arm instead of hitting full force straight to the steering wheel. And it's like, oh, I heard that voice to get me to turn around, and it had to be big enough to go, what? But I could see the wreck coming, and I couldn't do anything about it because the other people next to plow into me. So it was, I hear voices all the time. So,
and I hear voices much of the time as well. When I'm meditating or just in my bed, drifting off to sleep, I'll hear Jante, and I know that it's my guides. And then when I do energy work with people, sometimes they'll tell me, where to place my hands, or they'll just tell me, I'll get intuitive knowing, and it'll come through the voice of one of the guides working with me. So I have a lot of experiences with that. There's not one pivotal moment that comes to mind, but it's just a blending of, oh yeah, I've been doing this all my life.
It's amazing. And like we were saying, Sandy, with the car accident, and you probably all have experienced this over the years too. I have been where I've driven and I'll get to a destination and I don't have any recollection of being on the road the past 20 minutes, and I avoid an accident because I've already seen it coming. Kind of like that, I have this premonition as I'm driving, and it has saved me numerous times over the years. My kids were young. All of my kids are gifted differently, but yeah, and two of them hadn't been born yet when I had some of these experiences. So there was a higher power involved to keep me safe for sure. And hearing that voice and turning. You forget about them because so many experiences happen over the years, But definitely driving.
Some other experiences I've had where I've been lost, or there was one time when I was living overseas, and it was a moment, I won't get into the whole story right now, but I was in a situation of almost imminent danger. And then I did feel a presence just come and remove the situation and shift the energy and tell me you're safe. And it was really profoundly beautiful.
Yeah. So. That's just crazy. It's amazing how if we think back, and I've asked this too a few times with my guides, I'm like, have I had an NDE? Because I interview a lot of people who've had those death experiences and out of body. And then I'm getting all these flashes of images and I'm like, dang, I've had quite a few close calls and don't even realize it, where I've had those. And I'm like, I've forgotten all about some of them, and because I was young. But there's been several times, and I grew up in Huntington Beach, California. So I spent a lot of time at the beach, and one of my images was I got crushed by a wave, and all of a sudden I seen all this light, and then I was at the top of the water and was able to get out and walk off the beach. And the lifeguards were coming, because they must have seen it. I was probably 8 or 9 at the time. And I didn't realize until recently. And when I started interviewing more people, Spirit told me to do this. I'm like, okay, I guess I will. So they will step in and direct me. But
Yeah.
that was one of the NDEs that I wasn't even aware of. So it was interesting for sure.
Well, you also mentioned that you're a clinical hypnotherapist. So how do you do that? What is it that you do with that work?
So as a clinical hypnotherapist, I like to take people to past life, especially if they've had some traumas in this life and we need to look at those, or they're having this pattern or a dream that it repeats and repeats and repeats, and they just don't know why. So those are people I like to work with more than like weight loss, smoking, those kinds of things, shopping habits. I'd rather work with people that have had experiences that they're looking for more understanding. So I can either hypnotize them to this current life, or we can go to a past life. One of my persons, when I was learning, taking this in school, it's been almost 20 years now. And this individual, every lifetime we visited, she would always look over her shoulder, and there was always this man, and I could see this. So I'm actually watching as she's, having this experience. I'm seeing it play out before her. I'm getting these mental images, and she's terrified of this man, and she's always looking over her shoulder doing one of these. And in 3 lifetimes that we had visited, he looked a little different each time, but he was handsome each lifetime, but very controlling. I could feel the fear of this person, that this husband was very controlling and owning and those types of things. And so in this lifetime, this girl loves horses, doesn't ride them, but loves to be around rodeo circuit and works with the girls that are in rodeo and all that stuff. And she likes the cowboys, but she won't really date anybody or be in a serious relationship. She's always only with someone who is just getting out of a relationship where she knows it's like a rebound and she doesn't have to commit. And she's now in her early 40s. And so she'd had this birthmark on her face. And in several of her lifetimes, she had been riding horses. So I thought that was interesting because I'd known about the rodeo stuff prior, knowing her before I started doing hypno on her. And one of her lifetimes, she had landed, she was being chased and she's looking back. I watched the accident occur and she lands on a boulder. And the birthmark in this lifetime was the crushing rock that killed her. That was her injury to her head. So I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense now. When I brought her out of hypnosis, I was like, okay. And as she has had this removed, a little bit at a time over the years, she is more and more comfortable with finally having a boyfriend and actually sharing her life with someone and getting involved. So she's had to work through that current life trauma, but she deliberately came here with the intention of not have life repeat itself, history repeat itself. But everything that she does, like the horses, she won't ride, but she's very much loves them, involved with them. And in 3 lifetimes, she'd always been on horses. So there was definitely a correlation. Yeah. And if a certain particular looking man is interested in her, she freaks out. She just freaks out. And it looks like the man, the guy had dark hair. Right. He had beautiful man. Let me tell you, he's very good looking. He had very strong, facial features. He was, I want to say, probably Latin or Italian, coloring wise, very, very handsome man. But anytime anyone with those features or description, color and ethnicity approaches her, she just loses it. And she just wants to crawl out of her skin. It's really interesting to watch. So, but it's good to help them understand and hopefully heal that. Yeah. Right.
So does that tie in with your being a life coach then?
It does. It does. Yes, absolutely. Because, they need to have that. When they have these traumas and don't know which way to go, they have to do it for themselves. As a psychic, people, and you probably get this with some of your friends, you ladies probably know what I'm talking about, they want you to do everything for them. They do. What do I do here? What do I do there? And so doing the hypnosis, it's able to plant that seed for them to do the work. Because they're still under hypnosis, we're planting the seed to maybe, reframe
Right.
What happened? Let's view it from a vision. Let's view it from a theater screen, where you're in control, so giving them the tools to help them and then kind of giving them some homework, I think has really made the difference for her, because like I said, she's now more open, more available, still cautious, but she's willing to be a little more open, but not go down and make those same mistakes again. So it's really fascinating work.
Sounds like it.
Well, can you share any more about your journey and any more stories of how you'd like to see your clients or who they are?
Absolutely. I pretty much will work with anybody who wants to move forward, I guess is the best way. So I do some mediumship. I like working with people to be able to let them know or educate them that their loved one is still here, just no longer in the body. Not everyone is ready to hear that. I just read for a group of gals, probably about a month ago. Their friend was murdered earlier this year, which was a random act. It was a home invasion, and everything, the different details that the friend had, for their friends, was about loving, being accepting, understanding that this was actually her time. And sometimes, and I apologize ahead of time because it broke my heart, this girl had an 8-week-old baby in her hands, and just set the baby down prior to her passing. And very tragic situation, and just feeling the emotions as a mom, and someone that could be friends with this gal. Being able to help them, though, see that she's very much aware, because I brought up things that are currently going on with her husband and the baby and somebody else entering their life, why this girl is there, that she actually sent her to help her husband with their child, that this person will never take her place, And so her friends really needed to hear that. And then they said, well, the 4 keeps coming up. Well, the baby, it's been 4 months. Baby's now, 4.5 months old at this point. They do have this woman that showed up that is really, they liked her and they didn't want to like her because they wanted to respect their friend that just passed. And I said, it's okay. She sent her, and there's details that I could have never known about the relationship. So I think that helps give them a little peace of mind and to be able to start healing and accepting this person and knowing that you don't have to like her in the same way, but at least be open to the idea that she's not going to take her place, that she's really going to make a huge impact in a positive way in their lives, even if it's only been a few months. The husband sadly had a brain injury. He was shot in the head and survived. Yeah. So he's, you got to really look at the dynamic of such a tragedy, but the girls all walked away having a little lighter in their heart and being able to have some understanding. And like I said, sometimes people don't understand that when it's our time, regardless of manner in which we pass, it's our time, and it's really sad. I've seen people bump their toe, get a blood clot and die. I've seen people walk away from horrific accidents with barely a scratch. So I know that, and my husband's a first responder and has been in numerous life potential deadly situations, even a gun jammed on him at his head by an assailant. So I truly have to believe that when it's our time, because gun jammed, he's still here today. So I really try to honor and respect that, but carefully explain it to people how it is. And sometimes they're just not ready. So as a medium, I have to know that they're not ready, for how I interpret the message, but everyone's different for sure.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some really fascinating work that's making a very positive difference in the world.
I hope so.
And it's certainly unique because you're more than a life coach and a clinical hypnotherapist. You've got this psychic mediumship that you add to the mix, which it seems to me that adds an even multiple layers of awareness and knowledge and the ability to guide in a very gentle, loving way where people, or plant seeds, but helping with that guidance. It just, to me, is just beautiful what you're doing.
Thank you. I never think of it that way. It's just me, and I do like to help people, and I do. It's just, for me, it's about helping someone more than anything else. Like I said, I do a lot of work for free just because that's who I am. And it's honoring. I like to honor and respect the fact that spirit does come to me, and the loved ones. I have a funny story. I had shared earlier, my mom has always said, we'll see, we'll see. I don't know about you ladies, but I do feel earthquakes and stuff like that happen around the world. I don't know if you girls get those when they happen, or something big coming. And the Indonesia tsunami in 2004 was when I predicted. And my mom would always say, we'll see. And when it hit, she was shocked. But a couple years ago, we were in Las Vegas. And my mom has always still never really believed it because, a lot of people don't want to think their kids are psychic, they don't understand it. So that really scares them. And we were at the Hard Rock Cafe, and there was this beautiful Jamaican woman, and she was our waitress. And of course, her father kept coming through to me, and I'm just sitting there trying to eat, and trying not to say anything to this woman because it's just, for me, I would be blown away if someone did it when I was working, Right. And so they just would not stop. And so I couldn't even eat. I had so much anxiety and their energy, bouncing around me. So I finally said, I looked at my husband and he goes, what's wrong? And I go, her dad's here. And he goes, oh. So I told my mom, and my mom, of course, is looking around going, I don't say anybody, and I'm like, I looked at her and I said, no, Mom, he's passed away. And she goes, oh. Well, how do you know? And I said, I can't explain it, Mom. It's just, he's here, So finally I said to my husband, I'm sorry, I have to go talk to her. So of course I waited until she was alone, and I went up and introduced myself and asked if I could give her a message, told her what I did. And of course she's shocked and her mouth is open, but nodded yes and gave permission. So I was able to give her just a bunch of information from her dad. I talked about the new child, the grandbaby that they just had 7 months earlier, and it was the first girl, and just all these fun stories and details. And she's shocked because, I don't know her culture, but she's in shock because there's no way this total stranger, could know this about her. And so then she comes by the table again, and my mom says, well, I don't believe it. And I says, okay. I go, well, let me ask her. And it's divine intervention setting up that scenario for my mom, and her to understand. So I kind of waved her over and I just said, I'm so sorry to have to do this to you, but would it be okay if you shared what I shared with you? And so she told my mom and my husband, and they're both sitting there. My husband sees it often, but he still blows his mind. And I finally then started getting chest pains, my heart, I could feel like a heart attack coming on. And I says, and I knew it wasn't mine. And I said, who just had the heart attack? I said, your brother had passed from one, but somebody here, the physical, just had a heart attack. And she said, my husband did last night. We spent the whole night in the emergency room.
Wow.
And I said, okay, your brother wants me to give him a message. And so I gave her the message, to listen to the doctors, quit being stubborn, or he's going to be over there with your dad and him. And so she was like, I'll tell him, and my mom says, she goes, oh my God, you could make money at this. And I just kind of laughed at her. It's like, well, welcome to the party, Mom. It's only been happening for 20 years, but it was just really funny. But my mom, I was just like, of all the things, Mom, that you would say that, I just thought it was so funny. I was like, well, eventually that would be nice to be able to support myself, doing the work. So I just had to laugh, but it took that setup for that to happen, and then as my mom was leaving, she lives in Southern California. So for her, it's just a few hour drive, back to there from Vegas. And of course I have to fly because I live in Oregon. And so I told her that, I says, Mom, please be careful. And I could feel a stroke coming on with her. And I said, I have a feeling you're going to have a stroke. Please, watch your blood pressure, get on your, whatever you got to do, please just be careful. And she goes, well, am I safe to drive home? I said, you are. but I feel one coming. So please, please, please be careful. So 2 weeks later, she's having this stroke. And instead of calling 911, she calls me. And I'm just like, okay. So I'm talking her through it. My son, who's a firefighter EMT, he just happened to be home. It says, you need to call down to Southern California, get the EMS to my mom's house. So when he calls dispatch, my sister-in-law is a dispatcher. 911 dispatcher gets the call, and then she's got to transfer him down there. So it was just really interesting. The whole family was involved. But by the time the medics got there, and I directed them, which way to go through the yard and everything through the house, she finally started being able to speak clear again. So she survived the stroke. They did tell her another one would come if she, didn't do certain things. And, it's her journey. So I can't force her or stop her from anything, but she definitely has a vascular, the onset of vascular dementia starting from it and the high blood pressure. But there's nothing I could do. She just said, she don't listen to me, regardless of who I know.
Yeah.
Is what it is. I'm like, okay, well, we can. And some of you probably had that experience with a loved one too. You feel something coming and there's not much you can do about it, but sit and wait and watch because they just won't listen. And it's divine. It's their journey, and I have to remember that.
Right.
That's one of the lessons. Yeah.
Being neutral. It's a challenge sometimes.
It's a challenge. Absolutely. Yes. I deal with it a lot, especially in the work I do. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Being neutral. Well,
it's hard.
Well, have you ever actively or help someone cross over when they're actively dying and help people in their death process and made it easier for them to cross and know what's going on?
Yeah, so I work in senior living. So just to kind of, I've worked in high acuity where they're end stage, end of life, needing a lot of care. And there's been a time where there was a woman who just for 9 months, she would just be in a panic. Every time I saw her, they'd be pushing her in a wheelchair and she'd just be coming unglued. And I kind of stopped one day and I listened and I go, oh, she has vertigo. You guys need to slow down. She's in panic. And so I really feel that I'm in this line of work for that reason, to help those that cannot communicate. Some of them let the care staff know kind of what they need. But finally, about 9 months go by that this lady just was always in a full panic. She stops, and I would always smile at her, just give her this really big smile because she was so sweet. And I felt so bad because I could tell she couldn't communicate what was going on. So one day, though, she stops me and she goes, oh, there's the pretty lady with the big smile. And I'm like, well, how are you? And we got to have this wonderful conversation for about 3 minutes. And I walked away and I go, she's going to die. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, this is the first time this woman's had a conversation in 9 months. She was clear as a bell. She talked about art. She talked about her life. And then a half hour later, she was back to the panic, And about 2 days later, we would have this cat that would sneak into the memory care anytime someone was going to pass away. So we kind of follow the cat to see whose lap it was going to get in, and that would kind of be another indicator. So after I'd walked away going, oh no, she's going to die. The med tech's like, what? Don't say that. And then here comes the cat. Cat runs in and jumps up in her lap. And I looked at her and I was like, and within 48 hours, she started her actively passing. She had actually went for 9 days on morphine and nothing else. The family was there the whole time. And I was like, oh gosh, please leave. Because she kept telepathically telling me she didn't want no one there when she passed. She did not want them in the room. So she was stubborn. She held on. And finally, they all went to lunch. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go in and visit her. So I went in there and I just kind of said, okay, I took her hand, and I said, it's okay to go. They've all gone to lunch. they've all left, so this is the perfect time. If you want to leave and them not see you take your final breath, this would be the time. And I was kind of ran some energy. I just had this feeling to run energy on her, And then I said, I'm going to miss you, my friend, but it's okay. You're safe. It's okay to go. We're going to all be fine, And so I left the room. And of course the med tech knew that I was talking with her about transitioning, and she knows a medium. So she goes in there, and the lady was like ash gray for days. And one of the things she did was she took this breath and then stopped breathing. I go, no, not when I'm here. Wait till I leave, don't do it right now. And then she takes a breath. But after I left, she had gotten a lot of color. The med tech went in and checked her, and she said she just had rosy cheeks, had this beautiful glow about her, and took her final breath and passed within 5 minutes.
Wow.
So that was a good thing. I just don't want to be in the room when they do it, That's just kind of a thing that they kind of honor, I think. They know. But there's been several times where I have told residents that I knew were crossing over, it's okay to go. It's okay. It's going to be fine, So, but I try not to, a lot of times though, I think it's my agreement with Spirit and God that I don't need to know when their last day is.
Right.
I never want to know. I jokingly had a neighbor that said, I'm going to be gone tomorrow at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. And, and it took me a long time. This is what's really, and I should have known better. He had one of those pills that you could end your life. So when he said 2 o'clock Tuesday, I'm like, oh my God, stop, and again, it was before I started doing a lot of psychic work, but I thought to myself, oh my God, stop. You're so funny. Knock it off. You're not going to die. Well, he was gone at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. And I thought, how the hell did he know? Who wants to wait around till 2 o'clock on Tuesday, And then it took me a long time. He finally came through years later, because him and I always joke with people. He wasn't going to tell me his joke. And finally he says, silly girl, I took that pill. And I went, okay. That now it makes sense, but I was so close to it that I just couldn't see it at the time. It took a long time before we let the secret out of the bag. And I was like, you stinker. Yeah.
That's a hard thing to hear and to know. And, it's one thing that if it just happens, but that is.
No one wants to know what time they're going, And so when people ask me if I know when someone's going to die, I kind of say, well, it's kind of like I said, I never want to know, because no one wants to wait for 2 o'clock on Tuesday to know that that's their time, And his name was Larry. I know he don't mind if I share that, but he had MS. He had actually passed and had a DNR, and they revived him. So he was not happy. So that's why he was able to have that pill. And it took, like I said, a long time for him to come through after he passed to share that with me. So he just let me think that he got one up on me for knowing. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I spent the last few months of my mother's life with her. And I had a job interview about 4 hours north of where she was living, or 5 hours north. And so for a week, because she had 3 types of dementia, and for a week, I would say, okay, Mom, we didn't know until after, by the way, about the dementia, until after she had the brain biopsy. But because she was part of the brain donation program, and that's how we found out. But we knew that she pretty much this was gone. She recognized me, and she knew people, but she basically was wheelchair bound and had to be cared for physically because her brain had deteriorated to that extent. But when I come in, I start reminding her, well, Mom, I'm going to go away for a while. I'll be back after about a week, and just to prep her for my being gone after I'd been there for months. And finally, she looks at me. Now, mind you, she was not good at talking at this point at all. I mean, getting more than 1 or 2 words out. And she looks at me and she goes, go so I can go. And she transitioned within 3 days of my going on that trip, which I was really bummed out because I actually wanted to be there for her transition and love her goodbye, but I wasn't supposed to be there. So,
and that's how I tell people all the time, if we're meant to be there, we will be.
Right.
regardless. My husband, his grandma passed away a couple months ago, and I begged him, please don't go in the room. Just because he'd already had lost his mom and a grandpa, and he's really reeling from their death. And as a medium, I'm like, but they're right here, but they're not physically here, but I know they're here,
Right.
And I still talk to them. So for me, it's a little different on how I grieve. But I absolutely loved him. I mean, at the funeral, I was trying not to smile because she was making me laugh, and I'm just like, knock it off. You're going to make me look bad. Everybody's crying and I'm over here going, trying not to laugh. And my kids, of course, know that this is going on because they're gifted, and they're just like, okay, Mom, hopefully you can pass it off, and act like you're crying, and instead of laughing. But he went and saw her after she passed. And I'm like, oh, I wish she wouldn't have done that. And he's still haunted by it, Same with his mom. She waited till we all left the hospital. Yeah. We all left. Like, there was 8 of us. She waited for her brother to get there. He had to drive back from California. So she held on until we all visited, and then we all left. And we were home maybe 20 minutes, just got into bed. The phone rings. We have to take the mask, the BiPAP off of her. She's not going to last. My husband goes, you're going to come with me. And I said, no, your mom doesn't want me there. She doesn't want any of us there. So they took the mask off of her. They stepped outside, and by the time they stepped out and came back in, she had transitioned. And I knew because she had came by and showed me her legs, which were really important. And she was wearing a pink dress. Her hair looked like it did in high school, like her prom type of thing. And she showed me her legs, though, and doing a little dance. She loved to dance. She had, prior to her passing, she had so much water retention that her legs were like this big.
Oh, wow.
And so they actually did surgery, and they took off probably this much of her leg before they could get to any blood vessels because they were weeping so bad. So it was such a shock. So when she showed me her legs, my husband calls and says, my mom passed. I says, I know, honey. I said, your mom wanted me to tell you. I said, she looks great. I said, her legs look amazing. This is what she's wearing. This is what her hair looks like. I said, she's okay. Thank you. Thank you for what you did. And he's like, upset. Okay, And then my son remembered, he was going a few days later, we're going through this stuff and looking through photo albums, and there's a picture of her in that dress with that hair and those legs.
Wow.
And I was like, that's what she was wearing. And so that brought, at least, my kids and everybody were really comforted. My husband was. And about a week later, I didn't know his brother knew that I was a psychic or a medium. And his brother says, did Mom come through to Bridget? Because Mom told me she was a medium. I'm like, how the hell did she even know this? Because that was like one of the secrets. I've been married 33 years, and my husband's family, except for my father-in-law and none of them knew that. None of them to this day know that. Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing. It's just amazing.
They're not on Facebook, by the way, or social media. Yeah, then they'd be like, she's all over it. Oh my gosh, they don't go on there. Yeah, they have no idea. It's just kind of funny though, because I'll be sitting there and just, and all the loved ones are there at the holiday, and I can't say a word till we get in the car.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it's been the best kept secret in the family, I think, all these years. So a lot of fun.
Well, I want to make a point. I know you've got a website, Bridget Peeples, and I'm going to spell it because even though at the outro of the podcast, if people watch the video, we'll have that information written, but I still want to speak it. Bridget spelled B as in boy, R-I-D as in David, G as in girl, E-T as in Tom, P as in Paul, P as in Paul, LES.com, correct?
Yes,
so
that is correct, yes.
BridgetPeeples.com. What do you have on your website?
So I have just a scheduler there where people can learn a little bit about me, what I offer, and also to be able to schedule readings. We're working on a new scheduling platform that we're using. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, they could just email or send me a private message to Facebook. It's probably the easiest way to reach me is through Messenger or call me directly. And my phone number is there as well. And then I also have the YouTube channel as well. They can leave messages.
Right. So you did give me your Facebook group. which is Northwest Medium Bridget Peeples, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
I know you do readings on your Facebook group. So would you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So depending on which way spirit guides me, I do a manifesting Monday. So I will pull cards for people for manifesting what they want in life or their desires. And then sometimes I'm guided to do readings as well, or a message will pop through from a loved one or a guide. I also have a group, Transforming Grief from Loss to Life. It's a private group on Facebook. And I usually meet Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. And I actually will pull cards or bring messages through of healing for those that are listening or that spirit guides me to. Sometimes I'll try to get to everybody, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes spirit just wants to and not say a word because it's private. So they, and I'll tell people, depending on the message, if it's private, I'll let them know, okay, so what they're going to tell you is very private, so we won't be doing this in a group setting. If you'd like the information, please send me a private message. And then I'll do the reading for free, only because the loved one on the other side really wants to get this across, but it's very private. It's not for everyone to hear. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Okay. So I also, again, this will be on the outro. Your phone number for those who want it, is that's on your
I believe it's on my website, yes.
But it is 503-480-9137.
That is correct.
And you mentioned your YouTube channel. Is there a name for that? You can give me that information.
Yeah. It's also Bridget Peeples. I made it real simple.
Well, that makes it easy. So Bridget Peeples at you go to YouTube and then
so you go to YouTube and just put in Bridget Peeples in your search, and I should pop up there.
Fantastic.
Always looking for followers. It is something that I've recently started. Spirit has guided me and just said, just do it. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll start today. So they do have me, like I said, with my busy schedule and everything I do outside of my spiritual work. I have a very busy life too. So I try to honor spirit every time they ask. And so I just get guided. Like they directed me to you, Sarah, and said, you need to reach out to her. And I'm like, okay, hopefully she don't think I'm some crazy person. And she's like, who are you? Why do you want to get to know me? Which I thought was great, but I was like, spirit's like, okay, you can tell me this. And I'm like, okay, so it's kind of fun, but they definitely guide me to different people and scenarios and situations. So kind of fun.
That's interesting because you interviewed me regarding my near-death experiences.
Yes.
And I just remember, I don't remember if I said this in the interview, but when I was on the second one, when I was 6 years old, I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it to anybody,
right?
Which was very hard. But I look back, that was 1962. They would have put me in an institution so fast.
Absolutely.
But that's one of the reasons I do ask, okay, who are you and what do you want? Because I'm like, what's really going on here? But
so I really feel that all of our connections are definitely not by chance.
I agree with you.
With everyone I meet, I'll meet some people and it just feels like I've known them forever, and different connections. You guys had asked about hypnosis. I did a group hypnosis. My first one on Zoom, because I really like to be one-on-one, if I'm going to do that. But I thought, well, if Rob Schwartz can do it, and I took his, it should be fun. One of the people I was a little concerned with, I told him, from now on, you guys have to leave your phones on, if I'm guided. But we did this group hypno. Every one of them saw the same thing.
Wow.
Which is interesting. Yes, they saw the same town, similar houses, the same area. And so in past life, and they were from all over the place, these people, and it was 5 in the first group, so I won it manageable, but every one of them were in the same time era. I'm pretty certain they were all related or were friends in that lifetime because they all went to that lifetime. It was really cool. And
Wow.
even in this lifetime, 2 of the people have family in the same area up in a little podunk town of Elgin, Oregon, which is by the Idaho border, like up that is like population of like 10, type of thing. And they have family in the same cemetery up there, which I was like, oh, that's just wild. So a lot of cool stuff happens. And I get to facilitate it. So I absolutely love that.
Interesting. So just a real quick, another question about your YouTube channel. Is that primarily the interviews that you do with people?
Yes.
Or is there other things on there?
Right now, it's primarily the interviews. I've got a few, we've had some weather challenges here lately. So I have 2 types of internet. So sometimes it doesn't go as well. But I do mostly interview people at this point. I do plan on doing I think I have one meditation from a few years ago because I kind of set it up, didn't do anything. Spirit had me take my 50th year completely off and not do any work.
Right.
So they just basically said, now you're going to be prepared and you're going to keep going. So I really let them guide me at this point. But I do feel they're going to have me start doing some. I'm just not that comfortable with it yet, talking by myself into a camera and recording it. I like to have interaction,
Right. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Because
Facebook's hard enough.
I get that too.
Well, I can probably speak for all 3 of us. If you need guinea pigs, we will all be happy to come be guinea pigs with you.
Yes,
I would love to do that.
Models.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Ask if somebody's coming through for one of us, but I didn't want to go there,
Right. Yeah. Well, usually if they tap through, I'll be like, okay, who are you? Well, it's interesting because I keep looking to my right and I'm like, I don't know who this person is. But I do have a feeling it's probably your mom, Sarah. I do feel like it's probably your mom. Yeah.
Oh. Well, maybe
I did like a couple of times when you mentioned her, I instantly went to the right and I was like, okay.
She's a card. Well, maybe I should hire you or do a trade.
Always do a trade. I'm good with that too. Yeah, there's definitely, there's a couple people here. I do feel like one of them's your mom. She nods. So yeah. And you're right. She's a card is what she tells me.
Yeah, she is.
I don't ever use that word. I'm like a card. Okay, I'll say it. So she's a card.
That's a perfect description of her.
That's what she told me. She goes, I'm a card. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you later my favorite story that totally tells you her personality. So.
Oh, shit. So she reminds me of, so she's also showing me, that old lady with the rollers in her hair, that Frances that has those sayings on Facebook a lot.
That's my mother.
That's what she's showing me. And I'm just like, I forget what that lady's called, but that's what she's
exactly who you mean though, because that's definitely a character.
That is her. Yes. And that's what she shows me. And I'm like, that's who she reminds me of. And she's over here chuckling too. So it's just like, okay, so definitely your mom. Do you have a message? She's very aware of all your work.
Oh dear.
No. She's like, I am very aware. And she looks like this, like, it's like, okay, but she's playful with it.
Right.
She's very aware of your work, but she's got these serious eyes about it. Like, I guess the best thing you said it a little bit earlier, like in 1962, how people would roll their eyes if they heard something like that. But she's definitely very much in support of it. And she's very proud of you, the fact that you don't allow people to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like dissipate, which I don't use that word very often. You don't let people, what's the word I'm looking for? Hang on. Kind of squash your beliefs. You don't listen to, she's very proud of the fact that you don't allow others' feelings or their beliefs to really crush you and the work that you do. So she's very proud of you for that you actually step up and say, no, I'm going to do, this is what I believe and I'm going to hold my ground. And so that's what she's very proud of that. She wants you to know that. And she says that, she says there's a few more books too.
That I'm writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
She shows.
I just like to know when they're going to get published, right?
She's laughing. She's like, oh, no. She's being a stinker. She's not being serious when she does that. Hang on. Is there 6 books?
Originally, I dreamed trilogy, and the first story of the trilogy, it's 3 different protagonists, and the first one is so long that it's going to be 3 books. I don't know how the second and the third one will translate, and then there's 7 that are that I'm planning to do after that. So
she shows me 6 more books. I think we talked about those original, the first set of books that you're doing, right. But she talks about 6 more books, and they're about this thick each, and I'm like, okay, so I'm kind of, and they got a blue cover. What's the material? It's not kind of like a little faded. It's not this bright a blue. It's God, where's it? I paint, so I may have to show you some of the blue. I'm trying to find the blue. There's a blue. Oh, hang on. Hold on. Hold that thought.
I was hoping your dad would be here.
Okay. So,
I was hoping Sandy's dad would be here, but like an ocean blue.
Yes.
That's because it's about Atlantis.
I'll just set that down. She made me go pick up the blue. She's like having me search for the blue over here. I'm like, hang on, I spotted it. So it's that color blue. There's 6 books. So possibly what she says is when it all gets finalized and finished, I think there's only going to be 6. So I don't know if there's condensing going on or adding, like taking some away and adding some to different parts. But she shows me 6 books.
Yeah. Well, I mean, each one of the trilogy can be 2 books, but one book is over 300,000 words, and that's just too much for most books.
Right. So I couldn't read it. I'd have to have Audible. Especially if it's small print. I do a lot of Audible, but that's what she's talking about. And then,
well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Greatly appreciate it, Bridget.
Absolutely.
We hope you have enjoyed our conversation with Bridget. Bridget can be reached at the website www.bridgetpeeples.com, the email, the contact form on her website, on Facebook under Northwest Medium Bridget Peeples, and on YouTube under Bridget Peeples. Or if you'd like, you may call area code 503-480-9137. Please take a moment to visualize our planet Earth bathed in white light. Everything within, on, and surrounding the planet filled with this white light. And all energies in whatever form moving into and staying balanced for the highest good of all concerned.